Welcome. In this video, we're going to cover using global variables in Postman requests and Postman collections. To start, I'm going to assume that you have Postman installed, either the Chrome app or the native Mac or Windows app. If you don't and you need some help from that, you can go to getpostman.com docs, and there's a video and some documentation about how to install Postman on your computer. I'm using the Mac app, which you can see. On the left-hand side, you can see that I have history of requests that I've done the last couple of days and a list of collections. I'm going to walk through creating a chained set of requests, including global variables, that we're going to use to pass data from one request to the next. And we're going to create a collection to save the requests. For this example in particular, I'm going to find the weather near our Postman office in San Francisco and post it to a Slack channel. This collection is going to include 3 API requests using variables to link the requests. Go ahead and follow along, and you can create your own requests based on this template. The last request is going to post to a public channel on our Postman Slack account. And if you are following along, it would be great if you could change the address in the request so we get the weather posted from wherever you are. So for the first request in this collection, what I'm going to do is use the Google Maps API to find the longitude and latitude of the location that I'm interested in. To do that, I'm going to go to the Google Maps API Developer's Guide. In particular, I'm going to use this request. So I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to write my first request right here. I'm going to paste the whole thing right here, including this, the parameters and the output format that we want. So you can see here, the first thing I need to do is change the output format, or specify the output format. I'm going to specify JSON. And then I need to set some parameters. The 2 parameters I need to get the latitude and longitude are the address, the street address of the location I want to geocode, and the key, the API key that I'm going to use to access the Google Maps API. So I'm going to specify both of those right now. You can put the parameters up here in the request. I'm going to use the Postman parameters function. So I needed 2 parameters, one called address and one called key. And as I said, the value for the address is the U.S. postal address. So I'm just going to type in the U.S. postal address of where I am. And then I need a key. So I'm going to click here. I'm back on the Google Maps API, and getting a key is pretty simple if you don't already have one. So I already have one, and I've created a project called Casey's Weather Demo, so I'm going to use the key for that. If you haven't, go ahead and follow along on the Google Maps API how to get a key. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to enable the API, and then here's my API key. So I'm going to copy that, put that in here. So far my request is in pretty good shape. I am going to save it right now because I've typed enough that I don't want to run the risk of losing it. Saving it is great because I can share it with people if I want to, and then I'll be able to reference it pretty easily if I want to use it going forward. I'm going to give it a request name. In this case, I'm going to call it get lat long because that's what it does. If it was a more complex request, I might put a description here. I'm going to save it to a collection. A collection is kind of like a file folder. So in this case, it's a collection of requests that are related to each other. And it'll just be easier to have them together because I'll be able to refer to them, share variables, and run them later. So I'm going to create a new collection. I'm going to call this Get Weather and Post to Slack. And go ahead and save that. And so now over here on my collection side, you can see that I have a collection called Get Weather and Post to Slack. I'm going to favorite it so it pops up to the top because I'm working on it. And it has one request in it, Get Longitude and Latitude. So I'm going to go ahead and send this request and see what I get. So you can see from that I get a bunch of information about the location that I typed in, which is 145 Jackson Street, including the longitude and latitude. Before I go anywhere, I'm going to add some tests to this request. Two things. I'm going to add some code to make sure that the request works correctly going forward and also captures the information that's in the body of the request so I can use it later. So you can see here, first test is that I'm getting a 200 response, and then I do a couple of things. I set two variables, one called lat_long, which is the data I got from the Google Maps API, and then the formatted address, two pieces of information. And I go ahead and take the response body and put that in. I'm going to use these variables in the next couple requests. So now I'm ready to build my next request, which is to take that latitude and longitude and get the weather for that particular location. So I'm going to create a new request. To get this, I am going to use a different API, let's close this up, called forecast.io. And this is an API that has two specific calls, one that provides forecast and one that provides actually historical information. So this is what I'm going to call. Again, I'm going to copy and paste that here. So this also requires two sets of information, one the API key and one latitude and longitude. So I'm going to need another API key. I'm going to go ahead and get that. I have an API key. It's free for the first 1,000 calls every day. Here's my key down at the bottom. Again, you can request this if you don't already have one and if you're following along. I'm going to copy that, put that in the request. And then the next thing I need is the latitude and longitude. Now, as I said, I know the latitude and longitude from my prior request. Actually, before I do anything else, I'm going to save this request as well. I'm going to call this Get Weather. And I'm going to save this in the same collection, and I can save it to an existing collection, which is the one I just created, Get Weather and Post to Slack, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Again, over here, you can see that I now have two requests in my collection. But in any case, I want to put in the second parameter, which is the latitude and longitude. And so I got that from my prior request, specifically the lat_long global variable. So I'm going to include that here. I'm going to use double curly braces, which is how you specify that. I'm going to spell it correctly. And I'm going to save that. Now if I send that, what you'll see is I get a whole bunch of information about the weather at the latitude and longitude that I specified. So this is working pretty well. I'm going to put some tests here also. Again, start with making sure that I got the right status code for the request. And in this case, what I'm going to do is take the results of the Get Weather request and put them into two more variables that I'm going to use when I post to Slack. The temperature, which is the weather where I am, and the summary, which is a word summary of the weather where I am. So here are the two variables. I set them up here. I'm going to save this request, again, so I don't lose my work, and then I'm going to send it, and again, I get the same result. Okay. Finally, I'm going to post the weather that I've captured to a Slack channel. If you're following along, please do this step too. What I'm going to do is show you how to post this information to a weather channel in our Postman Community Slack team. And you can join the Community Slack team if you haven't already, and take a look at how the post shows up and completes this collection. And what I've done is created an incoming webhook. You can read about that here on the Slack documentation pages. I've already set that up in here. So you can look at the post, and I'll share this collection with you later so you'll be able to post right here. That's already set up. For this request, I need to set a header of content type application JSON. And I'm going to put together, again, some pre-request scripts. I want to set some variables. So here you can see I've set, I'm going to set the temperature. I'm going to round the information I got so it's easier to read. And I'm going to set up two global variables that I'm going to use in the post, title and body. Those are two parts of a Slack post. And the title is going to be checking in at the address, and the body is going to format how the weather is going to appear. The second part that I need for this post is the body, which is JSON. And you can read about what is necessary or what you can do customize here in Slack. So your username and the emoji, whatever you want to do, and the text that's going to go in there. So I have this set up that the username is going to be Postman SF Weather. I'm going to just change that to Casey so you'll be able to see specifically what I'm posting. And I'm just going to change the emoji to a ghost so that, again, this one is set up for a globe with meridians, which is a nice one. I'm going to put ghost here. And then in the actual post itself, we have the fallback and title. Again, you can read about this in Slack. Both of those take the title. The text of the post is going to be the body that I set up, the body variable that I set up in the pre-request script, and then the color on the side of the post. So I'm going to save that and go ahead and send that request, that post. And if I go over, I'm here in the Postman Community Slack channel, and a bunch of channels here, but one is called Community Weather. And you can see here that I just posted that. I put in my ghost, KCSF Weather, and the weather is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy, summer in San Francisco. So a couple other things, last things I'm going to show you. The collection's now done. Two things. I'm going to show you what I've done so far is set up each of these requests and run them in sequence and having them chain data. But I can also run them as a collection using a cool thing called the Postman Runner, collection runner. So I'm going to take my collection. These are all runs that I've done before in Collection Runner. I'm going to go to Get Weather and Post to Slack, and I'm going to go ahead and run that. And you can see on the right-hand side, it takes all three of my requests in the collection and runs them in sequence and gives me a report. And it worked terrific. So I'm going to go over to my Slack channel again, and you'll see another post coming in. So it ran it at just the way I wanted. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is about sharing this collection. So if you've been following along and typing, terrific. If you haven't, I'll be able to get this collection. I'm going to share it with you. There are a couple of ways to share collections in Postman. I'm going to use the simplest, which is a collection link. So I'm going to update this link, and that means that all the changes I just made to the collection will be shared right here in this link. So if you go to this link, this collection will download into your copy of Postman, and you can go ahead and run it and customize it as you'd like. If you have any questions or comments, please send us an email at getpostman.com. And if you would like, it would be great if you could join the Postman Community Slack. We have a number of channels there where people talk about how they use Postman, tips and tricks, and ask questions. Thanks so much.